You are listening to the QSR Web Podcast.
Hello and welcome back to the podcast, everyone, and hope that everybody's feeling good today. But if not, certainly the nearly 6,000 health juice restaurants nationally should be able to find you just the right mix to fix what ails you. One of the most successful of those ultra-nutritionally focused brands, Nectar Juice Bar, is apparently drinking a lot of its own business fitness formula because the brand, now at about 150 stores, is in a growth spurt. Today, Nectar Juice Bar CEO Steve Schultz is on board to talk about the green and all those brightly colored slurpable drinks right after this.
The Interactive Customer Experience Association's mission is to connect B2C brands to technology that elevates the customer experience. Brands have access to resources, project help, news, and insights based around boosting their customer experience. Suppliers gain network opportunities to reach these brands and help them provide solutions to elevate their customer experience. Join today at icxa.org.
Estimates by business research site IBIS World show that right now in the U.S., the consumer health juice market will hit about $3 billion this year, with an annual growth rate of approximately 1.8% after steady growth for the last 6 years. Those are numbers that likely make today's podcast guest take on a big, juicy smile, since as CEO of Nekter Juice Bar, Steve Schultz is sitting right near the top of the heap when it comes to this very defined QSR sector. Welcome, Steve.
Well, I'm happy to be here.
We are delighted to have you. Thanks so much for stopping in. And I'm hoping first you can maybe give us a kind of snapshot of the brand at the moment, including information about your sales and number of units and where you are right now nationally.
Nectar's at a good spot right now. We started, it's actually coming up on 9th anniversary here in just a few days, which is an exciting time for us.
Happy anniversary.
Well, thank you. I think a lot of people are excited about it. We just opened just this past week our 150th location and had a little celebration in the corporate office to celebrate, which was fun. And as far as the brand is concerned, we're moving along quite well. We just went into our 17th state, as I'd mentioned, about 150, well, actually now 151, 52 locations. Sales will exceed system-wide about 100, between 100 to 110 million, I would say this year. Spread out, so it's an interesting time. Things change and evolve as new competition comes up and various challenges arise. But fortunately, we've been able to deal with those head on and hopefully satisfy the guests and the consumers and our franchisees.
Where are you nationally again? Just as far as the penetration of states. Can you give me an idea of sections of the country, or are you just spread out everywhere?
It's interesting. Different concepts have different ideas on how they want to roll out a brand. For me, I felt it was very important to, test the brand and have proof of concept in a variety of different geographical markets. And then once I felt the proof of concept was proven out, then it was my goal to infill those areas. And so for us, we would start in, say, Southern California, 3 locations, and then in, say, Orange County, and then spread from there, and then San Diego, and then Phoenix, and Tucson, and Dallas, and Houston. So we don't go with the shotgun approach where you have some brands out there in which they will put possibly, one in Idaho, one in Minnesota, one in Cleveland, one in Chicago. And it's my belief that it's just very difficult from a corporate perspective, to support the store, the brand, the guest, the community, being that spread out. And so for us, it was important to be very specific in how we rolled it out, be very disciplined in that aspect of it. And secondarily, if you look at the brand, there's 150 locations, and approximately 45 of those locations are corporate locations. So I also thought it was very important that we really understood, all aspects of the brand so that we could relate to our franchise partners and understand the challenges and various opportunities that arose and share those opportunities with them.
Yeah, no better way than doing it, huh?
No, it really is. I mean, there isn't a thing that's happened out there that we haven't been through. So, when you're selling a franchise system, a lot of people are putting their life savings and their heart and their soul into it, and they're very passionate about it. And I think that we have a responsibility to give them the greatest support that we can. And the only way that I thought that we could go ahead and do that was by having as much experience as we could ourselves. So having 700 to 800 employees, having a 15,000 square foot office and staff that's been with us for a long time, I think provides that, and I think it provides a certain security for those for our franchise partners, and also for the corporate support stores that we have as well.
So now with 9 years, almost, right? Under your
Exactly.
belt.
I'm not sure on the date, so it's gonna be 9 years. I mean, it could be today, but it's not. So I know that.
So it's a pretty finicky market sector, and I'm wondering if you can tell me kind of the top two primary lessons you've learned, both about health juice in the limited service sector and about Nectar's customers in particular.
The easiest thing I'd say is that I think the biggest mistake that a lot of people follow, and I think that we've learned, is you can't follow a trend, meaning that you can't, each year something's going to come up, whether it be last year, the keto diet, as you know, was a big phenomenon. It's still out there a little bit, but it's, fading away, and I'm sure the next diet will come along. And with keto, obviously, people are drinking, less sugar, which fundamentally I think is a good thing. Granted, the sugar in fruits and vegetables and such is unprocessed and a different animal altogether. But a lot of people will jump in and say make a keto smoothie, or say flatbread becomes the hot topic. So I think that what we've learned is, one is you've got to be true to who you are. You've got to be consistent with your offering and meet the expectations of your guests, because I think that a couple of times when we've made that jump to try something that was an arm's length away from who we are or what we do, it is a surprise to the guests, a surprise to us in the response, and usually it doesn't turn out in a positive fashion. So I think trying to chase something isn't important. I think what is important is investing in your guests and in your team members. So I think that's been very important about it.
So stay true basically to who you are, and on that note, who is a Nectar customer? What's kind of the composite view of that?
The customers changed a lot over the years, in the sense of, when we first started, it was my belief that the guest was going to be driving a Range Rover, goes to Lululemon and buys the juice, and we're going to probably be in LA and San Diego and Newport Beach and places like that. As it's evolved, what we found is we go into areas such as Redlands, which I'm not sure if you know where Southern California is, but you go by basically 100 miles inland, and we've got some of our highest volume sales, or Chandler, Arizona, or various pockets in Texas and such. And so when you look at the guests, it initially started out as predominantly women. I'd say 80% women. It's now come down to about 70% women. The age is usually about 25 to 40. But we're seeing the top tier, the higher age, the brackets change actually I'd say quite a bit. When you're talking about a 10 to 15% shift in who your guest is, I find it interesting in the sense of we have which I believe is true, is there's a lot of people that are 70 years old that are probably a lot healthier today than they were when they were 50. And the kids today, when they were, such as myself or you or whomever, when I was going to high school and younger, and I'd get out of school, I'd go over to 7-Eleven and get a big gulp and a Snickers bar.
Exactly.
It's a common type thing. So I think it bodes well for the future when I walk into a store that's close to a high school, and very frequently, if not most often, if I'm by a high school, 3, 4, 5 o'clock or store, by a high school, I'll pull in and there may be, 20 kids just hanging out. They'll be listening to music. They'll be eating acai bowls. The girls will be drinking juices, and so I think that bodes well for the future, and the idea of how people view food and health and other aspects of their lifestyle.
Yeah, that's really interesting and kind of the evolution of your customer. And I'm wondering also between the start of Nectar and now, what would you, and this is kind of putting you on the spot, identify as for you the single biggest moment for Nectar as a brand, and why? Plus, how did that propel you forward?
You know, uh, I would say that there's two moments for us that would stand out. One is the most recent, meaning that as you probably know, the chances of a restaurant and or a QSR brand being successful are very limited. The percentages of franchise brands or any brand really for that matter getting to 100 locations is probably in the maybe single or low double digit numbers, and those getting up to 150 locations and having the staying power is even lower. So I think it's a testament to to the brand, to the loyalty of our guests. So I think opening 150 locations, and having that staying power and the growth in the pipeline, I think is that sort of signified to us that was a important moment for us. The second, probably most important moment for us was we recently signed a deal with a multi-state deal with Whole Foods, and they went through a process in which they obviously vetted out a variety of different brands, and Nectar was the one that they chose to be their partner, and we're in the process and have started and are in I can't remember, 3, 4, 5 locations so far, in which we're taking over their and branding the Nectar brand inside Whole Foods, and taking over the coffee and juice concession. So we have basically our coffee and juice concession. So we're taking over the basically our same menu that we have in the stores. It might be slightly limited, but not really. And then we also have we've expanded coffee. So I think that having presence in Whole Foods, having them choose us, I think is a nice validation point for us. I'll be down in Texas next week, in Austin, meeting with the folks at headquarters to talk about our expansion plans and their expansion plans for what we want to do for 20 and moving forward. So I think that I think those two things probably stand out the most.
That is a huge partner. But you're growing so far beyond your California base, and that may mean, you talked a little bit about this, may mean fewer health focused populations. At least that's I guess the stigma. Southern California is where the health focused people are. But you and I, and probably everybody listening knows that's not true. So, wondering what differences, though, if any, you're seeing between your customers in LA and maybe those in some place like Ohio or Atlanta. And then how does the brand identify and then play to those differences at those locations?
That is an interesting question, and one that you can't really minimize as a brand because there are differences. And when we started the brand, the idea was to be affordable and accessible to anybody that desires a healthy lifestyle. And so if that is if that is a premise in which we live by, then it limits us, it self-regulates us to a certain degree on the types of products that we want to offer. And what I mean by that is in Los Angeles, you will find some boutique juice bars that have, very exotic superfruits and dusts and potions and elixirs and things like that, which, as you can imagine, would fit into LA quite well. I'm using LA specifically, not necessarily California, but clearly that's not going to play in, say Albuquerque. And then fundamentally, what you've got to also be careful about all the differences is an example, and I think this is probably a pretty good example. Last January, we ran a LTO. We ran our limited time offer from our first quarter, which was January through March, and it was a kombucha smoothie. So what we did is we replaced the coconut water with a kombucha. It lowered the fat by 50%, calories by 50%. It was a refreshing drink. And in California, the numbers were off the charts in the PMix, and it just jumped right up the ladder. However, once you got past the California border, the education and the insight and the knowledge about kombucha, you know, many states had a hard time, understanding what the word was, let alone whether they wanted to go ahead and buy it. Uh, so to say it wasn't a very successful, LTO would be an understatement. We ended up with a little too much extra, a few thousand extra cases of kombucha sitting around. So if you want some, let me know. But so it forced us to take a greater look into the various demographics and the desires, and they're not desires, but they're, the palates. And what we've done with that is we've just been, that they are. I'd say, and I don't want to say a more basic, but I think that we make sure we educate the guests a little bit more if we want to come up with something that's a little bit more, exotic or unique or not as well known. And then from a regional basis, we'd like to regionalize our snack programs because people do have different tastes in Texas than they do in California, than they do in Florida, in a variety of regions. And so we like to apply some, flexibility, with our franchise partners and our corporate stores to allow that to happen. But I think that again, going back to one of my original statements, in which you've got to stick to who your true customer is, I think is very important, and making the assumption that what people know in California, they also know in Chicago or Mississippi would be a misunderstanding on my part, and was. So but with that said, it is that our sales are growing very much. I'd say that the growth we're seeing actually is growing in the the Texas and those other states and areas. So I think that, as people say, a lot of things start out, pushes from the coast, from New York and LA, and eventually catches up in the middle. And I think that we're seeing that. We're seeing numbers that running at a higher rate in those areas than we are in California. We're seeing more questions and more insights and different things that we haven't seen for a couple of years. So I think it's interesting to see what the different guests in the various regions provide to us.
Absolutely. And I was thinking about this, particularly since we all are kind of fixated on labor because it's such a problem. But you all pride yourselves on the knowledge of your staff. And this gets to be pretty intricate stuff when you're talking about nutritional benefits of juices and the best formulas for specific desires or needs. And so I'm wondering, how in the world do you find those kind of knowledgeable people to work or be trained to work at your stores, particularly in this super tight labor market?
And you are spot on with the labor market. As an example, I can remember opening up our store in Long Beach, and we had a job fair, and I think that we had close to 100 to 150 people in line, applying. Today, if I ran that same ad, we would be lucky to have 2 or 3 people, show up. So it's been very difficult to in California in particular, and other regions as well. Therefore, to overcome it, the only way we've been able to overcome it really is through education, meaning that we've increased our retention rates by more than doubled our retention rates. And I think that the way that you go ahead and do that is a couple of different ways. One is, which I think most brands underestimate this, is that when we make up a marketing calendar and allocate marketing dollars, most people would assume that I'm discussing basically our campaign to an outward-facing guest like yourself, like come in and get a smoothie at happy hour, or a free add-on, or a cleanse, or whatever it may be. But reality, the best money spent really is investing that marketing calendar into your team members. And so the inward-facing investment that we make into the staff, on whether it is expanding their knowledge and becoming a juiceologist, in which they can earn more dollars per hour, whether they get bonused on tenure, they get bonused on performance. We do events, parties, a host of different things. But if you saw our marketing calendar, you'd at first look at it probably the same. I'm not understanding what this really is until we explain that it's a calendar really for our investing really into our team. Because I think that if I go ahead and invest, my belief is that if I invest in our team, when somebody walks in, they're going to be smile and happy, the guests are going to smile and be happy, and things are going to move along, and somebody's going to refer them, and they're going to refer other friends to work for us, and be interested in gaining more knowledge and insight on health and wellness and things of that nature. So I think that that's been a critical component for us, and I think it's where a lot of brands underestimate how they should allocate some of their budget.
Interesting. So we kind of got to wrap things up here, but I wonder if before we do that, you might share with our audience something about the brand, or at least hint at it in the year ahead, that you personally are really excited about.
What am I really excited about with the brand? Obviously, as I mentioned earlier, the Whole Foods opportunity and what's ahead, I think, is something that that I'm excited about. The app, which has made unbelievable growth in leaps and bounds. We passed 500,000 people, 500,000 people on our app just the other day, and we have some new interactive platforms that are going to be introduced in the first quarter, which I won't go into the details of what they'll be the point. But I think that they are going to be exciting and engaging, for the guest. And then a new experiment that I'm interested in to see how it goes is we are beginning to test ghost kitchens, which you've heard a fair amount about ghost kitchens out there. And with the propensity for delivery and with the introduction of our catering platform next year, I'm very interested to see how these ghost kitchens form and integrate with the retail storefronts.
Fascinating. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. And I'm sure you've got some things you just won't tell us, but you.
Yeah, exactly. I can tell you off the air. I can tell you what those are, but we'll save those for another day.
Well, thank you, Steve. And now I have to say I'm extremely thirsty, so maybe I will take you up on that kombucha. But I have to thank you so much for stopping by to tell us really some of the interesting things. And there are a lot of them going on with Nekter. It is a beautiful brand with a great mission. And to all our beautiful listeners, I want to thank you too for stopping by. And until we meet again.